This is the Tame Aperture podcast.
Open the pod bay doors, Cal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Welcome to the Tame Aperture podcast, where we talk movies from first-time directors, indie, art house, and much, much more. Today on the podcast, we talk the 1999 directorial debut of director Spike Jonze and his fantastical comedy, Being John Malcovich, written by Charlie Kaufman and starring John Cusack, Catherine Keener, Cameron Diaz, and of course, John Malcovich. In this cult favorite comedy, unemployed New York City puppeteer Craig Schwartz reluctantly takes a temp job as a filing clerk for the eccentric Dr. Lester. While at work, Craig discovers a portal that leads into the mind of renowned actor John Malcovich. When he lets his attractive co-worker Maxine in on the secret, they begin both an unusual business scheme and an odd relationship that involves Craig's restless wife, Lottie. This is the Tame Aperture podcast. I'm Gabe Vienendahl, filmmaker, film instructor, and movie enthusiast, and I'm joined today by Alan Martindale, veteran podcaster and editor. Alan, how the hell are you today?
I'm doing great, man. We're watching John Malcovich, Being John Malcovich. Love this movie.
I love this movie.
It's great.
This is one of my top 10 of all time.
Of all time?
All time.
Damn.
There's no more. If I was to sit back and go, man, how about this? If someone put a gun to my head and said, you better write a movie, and it better be quirky, and it better be crazy, and if it's not, you're fucking dead. I would hope that my brain would write Being John Malcovich.
It's phenomenal.
Because I think I could present it to the person holding the gun to my head and I'd be alive.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's everything about this movie, and it changes tones kind of partway through it, but I still like it. Like it starts as a comedy, and I love the sense of humor that Spike Jonze brings to this thing. I love it. It's my type of humor. It's absurd and it's hilarious. And it's almost like it's made for me. But then when it doesn't really turn a whole lot, but it kind of becomes less of a comedy and gets a little bit dark. I like that too. Like for me, that's fun. That's the kind of shit I gravitate to normally. So this kind of movie is just made for me.
This is written by Charlie Kaufman, which
so good.
Just writes so many phenomenal. For me, like I'll watch anything that he writes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, you talk about this film, and then you talked about director Spike Jonze. I mean, he steps in, and one of the things I have a respect for is now Spike Jonze had done a lot of things before, not films, but he had done music videos, and really creative, really stylistic, and just has a real strong aesthetic to how he makes things. But this is his first film, and I think that it's right up his alley. But if you read this is the thing though, if you read the script, you go, how the hell am I going to make this?
I can't even imagine. Well, let's not brush past Spike Jonze's most important contribution to the artistic,
the Sabotage video from the Beastie Boys,
the art of cinema, and that is obviously Jackass. Dude, I love Jackass.
That's right. Was he a producer on that?
I think he was. I think he directed the movies, if I'm not mistaken.
Movies, that's right.
But he was part of that crew.
He was part of the crew.
He was always part of the crew. Like
yeah.
he's in it, and he's in a lot of stunts.
Him and Knoxville are boys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, going back to the CKY videos that Bam did, like I just love that shit, man. I love it.
Super creative.
It's the whole punk rock aesthetic, the skater aesthetic, the whole. And I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but like that was my generation, man. That was it. That was it.
Yeah, and for me, similarly, like I agree. I loved Jackass 2. Not the Jackass 2, the movie.
Right.
I also enjoyed Jackass.
Yeah.
But also the music videos that he brought to the table. Like I was a big Beastie Boys fan. So like,
of course,
the Sabotage video.
The Sabotage video.
Where did that come from?
Right.
Like, the conceptually, like,
it's amazing.
Has nothing to do with this song.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
But the detective, old 70s. Exploitation kind of style look, like
it's amazing.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So Spike Jonze is great, and later does a film called that we were talking about earlier, and he's done a few others, but Her,
Love
with
Her.
with Joaquin Phoenix, and that's a great movie.
It's so good.
It's hard to fail if you have Joaquin Phoenix.
True.
I just think
True.
he's such a good actor.
He really is. He really is.
But we digress because we want to talk about Being John Malkovich. But Spike Jonze is great. So for directorial debut, some of the films we've done in the past few episodes, some are hit and miss, some don't. They're not swinging out the gate. You can kind of see their learning curve. Matter of fact, we talked about Clint Eastwood's directorial debut, the play Misty for Me. And it's like, it's not bad, but it's not good. It's like just kind of in the neutral area.
It's a filmmaker finding his feet
right.
for sure.
Then you have Look Who's Knocking at My Door by Martin Scorsese. And you're like,
I hate that movie so bad.
We know you hate it.
I'm going to mention it. It's going to be my goal to mention it on every single episode.
Well, that's why I brought it up. Because I want to make you hit your goal.
Okay. I like it.
But real quickly, let me read something that I found pertaining to that to Scorsese.
Okay.
Because just recently, this week, it came out a couple weeks ago, but this week I watched The Irishman on Netflix, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci. And when we reviewed Look Who's Knocking at My Door, we both thought the same thing, which is like, what the hell is this?
Right.
You more than me, even. I'm more of an apologist.
Right.
When it comes to filmmaking. You're like, this was the worst movie ever made.
It's pretty close. It's bad. It's
but
bad.
There's a book out there that I'll read sometimes when I'm teaching. I just kind of try to do studies, and it's one called On Filmmaking, and it's Introduction to the Craft of the Director by Alexander McKendrick. And the foreword in the book is by Scorsese. Okay. And so he says this, and the reason I brought it is because I want you to embrace this concept because you hated Look Who's Knocking at My Door so much. And Scorsese says this, and he's talking to student filmmakers at colleges and universities. And he says, quote, "Though it will be only a couple of weeks before you are familiar with the basic mechanics of filmmaking, it will take a lifetime of hard work to master them. As someone who feels like he's still just beginning, theories are fine, but practice is everything."
Sure.
So and we know that, we get that concept, but I just want to iterate that The Irishman was a fucking masterpiece.
Okay. I'm dying to see it. It is very long. So I haven't been able to carve out 3.5 hours to watch it.
Carve it out.
I know.
It's fine.
Because I'm not going to chop it up. I don't want to do that with something like this.
Makes sense. But just as a throwback, 50 years before, he makes Look Who's Knocking at My Door, and we both go, what the hell is this thing?
Right.
And then he comes out with this, that practice,
Sure.
the understanding that I don't know it all, and as I go out and practice, and things will get better. In his case, they definitely do.
Oh, without a doubt.
Anyway, I was reading that for a class and like trying to prep a small lesson, and I thought about our podcast about his first film and his most recent
and
film.
how far he's come.
Yes.
For sure.
So jumping back to other first-time film directors, getting back into Spike Jonze and Being John Malkovich, we both agree that Spike Jonze aesthetically and stylistically is fantastic.
Yes.
Also, I believe was a co-founder of the Vice channel.
I think so. He's definitely involved in some capacity.
Has some kind of involved in on their.
He
on
might
their
be a co-founder. I'm not sure.
Alan, Being John Malkovich is a head trip.
Yeah.
We got off of we got off last week talking Dennis Hopper's first film, Easy Rider, and now we're jumping into Being John Malkovich nearly over 30 years later, and both of them are head trips, but in different ways.
Definitely.
This film for me is a head trip, but there's so much engagement for me. I was confused on Easy Rider. We were, like we mentioned last week, we were trying to figure out where to get bearings and kind of where to establish what's going on. I enjoyed the film, but and more so after we talked about it. But this film, for me, out of the gate, I'm in.
For sure.
100%.
For sure.
Curiosity, engagement, a little confusion, a little uncertainty, eccentric characters, style of filmmaking, like shooting and coverage. I'm in the whole time. Never once in this entire film do I ever go, why? Or this is dumb.
No, definitely.
Or I can't follow. Or I'm not engaged and interested. And so that's why when I was talking about before, like if someone had a gun to my head and said, write a screenplay, this would be the one I would write.
For sure.
It's so good. Charlie Kaufman, other things he's written, and we give a lot of course, credit to director Spike Jonze, and rightfully so, but also for someone to conceptualize a story like this, I don't even know where you begin.
He that's what he does. He lives in that weird world. Like adaptation is.
I love that movie.
That's
too.
fantastic because if I'm not mistaken, I heard an interview with him. He was supposed to write something about botany, and instead he ended up writing something about he and his fictional twin, and it's a bizarre, weird world that he lives in. I would love to just see his process of writing and how he comes up with this stuff.
He and you say in adaptation, which stars Nicolas Cage, you can't go wrong there.
Right.
Nicolas Cage.
Right.
What are you gonna get? You don't know, and then you watch it and you're like, I'm in.
And he's a damn good actor, and he's very
good.
subdued, and he's great
really
in
good.
that movie.
And you got to play two roles.
Yeah, you do.
But his inception or the origin of adaptation came from literally just a concept around botany.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, I write a story on botany, and then he
Right.
starts discovering this process that leads to what it is.
I think he had writer's block, and that's what happened.
Is that what it was?
It's-
And because it plays into that, he writes about
Exactly. And so he ended up writing about having writer's block,
Yeah.
writing a book about botany.
it. Yeah,
And it turned it into a screenplay.
I love it.
It's insane.
I don't know how his mind works that way.
It's insane.
Similarly, in Being John Malkovich, I had read somewhere that Charlie Kaufman was like, I want to write a story about a man who wants to commit adultery on his wife. In other words, like, I want to write a story about a man who cheats on his wife.
Right.
Okay, I see where, like, there's plenty of movies out
Sure.
there about men who cheat on their wives.
Right.
You know what I mean? You would never assume this to be one of them.
What the fuck? How did this come? What?
If that was
This
your
popped
base,
out of that?
if that was your foundation, where did this? That's what I mean. Where does the mind go to get here? So to lay out a little bit of this storyline, we'll kind of start at the beginning. This one will take a little time to kind of break down each thing and try to figure different things out. But it stars John Cusack. He plays Craig Schwartz. And the opening scene, we establish immediately that Craig Schwartz is a puppeteer.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an odd, eccentric kind of art.
Yep.
It's very cool, but it's like your lead character is a puppeteer.
Right.
And it's just a shot of the first minute or so is just a shot of a puppet being on strings, a Pinocchio type character on strings. And it's just doing this elaborate kind of dance back and forth.
Well,
It's filmed beautifully, by the way.
It is, and I wonder how they operate the puppets, because it can't just be on those wooden sticks.
Yeah.
Because I have one of those things. It's kind of a novelty thing, and I've tried moving it around a little bit, and you can't.
Not with that fluidity.
No, and so I wonder. I mean, this is 1999, so this is way before the advancements in CGI and all that. So
Right.
obviously, it looks like a practical effect.
Plus, Spike Jonze doesn't seem like the kind of director
No.
who's like, let's do CGI.
Right.
He wants that in-camera
So,
shit.
do you think he hired some puppeteers to make that shit work that way? Because that was very impressive.
It's beautifully done.
It really is.
And it's this dance with this Craig Schwartz lookalike. It's Craig, the character,
Right.
played by John
Right.
Cusack, as the puppet. That he's
Right.
because as the puppeteer, you make your own puppets,
Yep.
right? It's your own thing. But it's this scene, and you just kind of, it's just, there's no introduction to a character, and then it kind of works up, and then we see John Cusack finish the strings,
Mm-hmm.
and then it like randomly takes a sip of beer, and you're like, okay, where's this going?
Right.
Because we just started out with this elaborate dance with a puppet,
Right.
and now we're moving to this guy who's a little disheveled,
Right.
and like you hear his wife off in the background,
And she says, it's time for bed.
it's time for bed.
And that is just the perfect contrast, because he's so free in this little world, and then all of a sudden he's ordered to go to bed.
Right.
And it's just, you've already set up kind of the world that we live in.
And then the next scene is immediately a parrot or a parakeet on his head, on Craig's head. Time to wake up.
Time to wake up.
And jumping on his head.
Time to wake up.
Craig.
Yeah.
And it cuts out, and it's this weird apartment with animals and, of course, a bird on his head. And then introduction of Cameron Diaz as his wife, Lottie, who doesn't look like Cameron Diaz as we know her.
No.
As a matter of fact, I think it would take a minute for you to realize that it's actually Cameron Diaz.
For sure.
She does great in this movie.
She does. Everyone's fantastic.
It's so good. The performances. All I'm going to do is applaud this film.
Yeah.
I'm not. Some films we kind of dissect and we get. We're not. This one, everything I'm going to talk about. All I'm going to do is give accolades.
It's so much fun to kind of jump back into a movie that I just love.
We get Cameron Diaz. Cameron Diaz plays Lottie. Lottie and Craig are married. She asks Craig if she can feed. Damn it! Now I forgot the
can't remember.
the damn chimp's name.
Oh, I just
Elijah.
had it too. Elijah. That's right.
Elijah. She says, "Can you feed Elijah? I got to go to the store." She runs or operates a pet store, and there's pets all over the house.
Yeah.
Iguanas and eccentric pets and everything. And he's like, "Which one's Elijah again?" He doesn't know.
Right.
She's like, "It's the chimp who has a traumatic past."
Yeah. Forgot about that.
The chimp has a traumatic past.
He's got a therapist. He's got a psychotherapist.
He's got a psychotherapist. He has to work through his issues.
His childhood trauma.
Yeah, his trauma in the past.
And
yeah,
we see it. We see it later on.
We do see it later on. Craig's not happy in life.
No, but he's very chipper for someone who's unhappy.
I don't know that he's chipper. Do you think he's chipper? I don't feel that he's chipper. I feel like because the subsequent scene is him sitting on a couch. He's disheveled in his look physically, but he's also he looks over at Elijah. The next scene, Elijah, the chimp, is on the couch with him, and he's like, "You have no idea the truth of what it means to have a conscious state of mind."
Right.
He's like, "I think
you're so lucky.
I suffer." It's just this depressing kind of
But
setup.
I also feel like there's part of him that enjoys that because he views himself as an artist.
Yeah.
And artists are supposed to suffer. And there's, I feel like he's got this romantic idea of what an artist is. And they're supposed to suffer and put their suffering into their work.
Yeah.
And I think so there's a little bit of that. But and when I say chipper, I don't think he's chipper, but he's very nice for someone who's got a life that he's not happy with.
Yeah, he's very polite.
Yes.
And you say suffer, and that's funny because he actually says that to Elijah the chimp.
Exactly.
He says, I think, I feel, therefore I suffer.
Right, exactly.
Because he has consciousness.
Yeah.
And then we see this right there, there's a Derek Mantini. Derek Mantini is the worldwide, in the stories, this worldwide famous puppeteer.
Which is hilarious.
And Craig kind of despises him and also wants to be him.
He respects him.
He does. He respects him, but he's also always judging his artistry.
Yep, exactly.
And in the news, this famous puppeteer, Derek Mantini, is manipulating a 60-foot puppet on a bridge.
With cranes.
And Craig calls him a gimmicky bastard.
Gimmicky bastard. But this is why I say I think he respects him, because he says it with kind of like a half smile.
Because there's a slight appreciation.
You did it, you son of a bitch. Like, how did you do it?
Damn you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what's Craig's real dream?
Is to be him.
Or to be a successful, famous puppeteer.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is not even his wife alludes to it when the parrot's on his head jumping.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up, wake up. She's like, maybe you'd just be better for now if you got a job.
Right.
Honey, I told you there's no jobs for puppeteers. It's a wintry economy.
The whole economy thing he keeps bringing up. It's
where do you get this dialogue?
Right.
I'm sorry. This is where the writing
Charlie Kaufman's brilliant. I swear to God.
His writing's so good. But Craig, and then it cuts to Craig out on the street, and he's like a street puppeteer. So in contrast to Derek Mantini, he's working the streets of New York on a corner, hoping that someone will give him $1 in a hat.
Yeah.
And
I love this scene. I love this scene when the little girl comes to watch.
There's almost an uncomfortability to the scene because the little girl's there.
Right.
And the little girl's like, "Daddy, a puppet show." And she starts watching while they're waiting to cross the street.
Right.
And then it's the Craig starts doing some
very sensual
performance.
Priest.
suppressed sexuality, and through the walls of the stage, they're basically humping each other.
Right.
And the dad of the girl turns around and is like, "You motherfucker." Punches him out.
In that New York way, just, "You motherfucker."
Yeah.
Just knocks him.
But this is where, what's fun to talk about stories that have plots that and little points that lead to the next thing.
Right.
We've established immediately Craig's a puppeteer. He's an artist. He desires to be bigger and better than he is currently. We know that he's not doing a lot. Economically, they're not doing that great.
Right.
And he's on the street performing, and the punch from this stranger is the thing that kind of leads him to go, "Man, for now I just better get a job."
Right.
But
the funny thing is when he goes, he walks into his wife's, into Lottie's pet shop, and she sees that he's been hit,
punched.
And she goes, "Not again." So obviously this is a continuing problem that he gets knocked out on the street.
Right, and he like lisps with a broken lip, like,
right.
"I'm a puppeteer."
It's just great. It's the whole thing.
This is what I mean. Like, immediately, for me, I'm entertained. When I watch the movie with my wife, she's like, she had seen it. I watch it a lot. I'll watch the movie all the time. My wife's literally like, "This movie again?"
Oh, we're doing this again,
and
huh?
She's like, "It's so weird." She doesn't hate it, but she's also like me. I'm like, every time I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's watch." She being John Malcovich, and but the point being, like, he gets punched out. Then he gets. It's a catalyst for him to go find a job.
Right.
It takes him out of his desire to be what he wants to be, and feels like he has to fall into the robotic position of like, "Man, I guess I'll be like everybody else."
Right.
And go find a place to work.
And everything about him, it goes against his nature.
Goes against him.
Because he is, not only does he want to be famous, but he enjoys controlling and manipulating these things.
Right.
He loves being in control, because it sounds like in his life, he's not in control of anything.
At all. He has no control.
At all. Right.
And the one thing that he's a master at is the puppeteering.
Right.
And he does have that control. And this comes into play. What's beautiful about the writing is that it comes into play. That all comes into play later.
Absolutely.
In a very, very, very strong way.
Right.
And a literal way.
Right.
Which we'll get into. But he goes to find a job, and he finds one to go interview at what's called Lester Corp.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets an interview, and he walks in, goes up the elevator, and the building or the office of Lester Corp is on the 7.5. How do you say that?
A half.
How do you say that?
Floor 7.5. We'll say that. Yeah.
7.5.
Yeah.
No, on the floor 7.5 of the building.
Right.
And you're like, what? And notice too that who was in the elevator there. It's and now we're gonna kill her name. She becomes Octavia Spencer is the woman in the elevator. She's more of a big actor now, but like when this was made in 20 years ago, it wasn't really, that was like a very minor role.
Right.
But she's the one that looks at Craig in the elevator, and she can tell he's confused.
She could tell.
And she's like, "You're going to the 7.5.
Yeah.
I can't say it.
7.5. She's like, yeah.
7.5,
Yeah.
and he's like, yeah. So she grabs there's a crowbar in the corner of the elevator, and then it cuts to the elevator, and you see all these dents in the elevator. And right as they get between 7 and 8, she hits the emergency stop and pries the elevator open with the crowbar, and it's a half floor.
It's just even getting off the elevator. It's just like that thing. Just everything's a struggle. Everything's a struggle.
Nothing's normal.
Right.
In
Nothing's
Craig's
normal.
life.
And you can't even walk into an office building without having to bend over because the ceiling is so goddamn low. Like, everything is a struggle.
This goes back to the writing, which is like, if you're writing this, like, where do you decide that it's going to be the 7?
I just don't understand.
You're like,
Charlie Kaufman.
You've written things, I've written things, none of which are probably good, but the concept being, where do you come up with, why the 7.5?
It doesn't make sense.
It's just
crazy. That
crazy.
has to come from somewhere, right? Like, it doesn't. You can't just be like, oh, I have an idea. Like, it's got to come from a story or an experience or...
Because immediately you go, what world are we in?
Right.
That's not a normal world.
And people are walking around like it's just normal to be there.
But the beauty of the atmosphere that's created is like Spike makes it just feel real.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's normal.
It still has that mundane office feel to it.
He walks out on there and he's crouching and like he's ducking to get through, and he goes into the interview, and it feels like a normal office. There's nothing outlandish about the world other than it's a bit odd.
Right.
That it's on the 7.5 floor.
Right.
So Craig walks out. He's trying to get this job. He goes in and meets Lester, right?
My favorite character in this whole movie.
Dr. Lester.
First, he has a interesting interaction with the receptionist.
Oh, yes. who, by the way, Flores, the receptionist.
Flores, yeah.
And who Dr. Lester loves. Like he has quite a physical attraction to her.
Right.
And she has
But he's not banging her, if that's what you're implying. I just love Dr. Lester so much.
Dr. Lester's funny. He's great. She has a hearing thing. She can't ever hear quite what he says. I'm Craig Schwartz.
Allegedly. It feels to me like she's kind of doing it just a little bit out of spite.
Right. But she brings him in to meet, and this will come into play later with the relationship between Lester and Flores. But ultimately, he gets into the office of Lester, and he's in an interview, right? And Lester's, and also the description of the job, which is like a filer with fast hands, and
it makes sense for some reason.
And you're like, okay, like these are all little
But here's the one thing, it's the little things that just, and this seems like a joke that would be like on Airplane or The Naked Gun or something, where, first of all, she, what's the receptionist's name? Flores. She doesn't get his name. He said, "My name is Schwartz."
Right.
And she said Juarez. She keeps hearing Juarez.
Yeah.
So he goes in, he sits down, and Dr. Lester goes, "Mr. Juarez," and he goes, "It's actually Schwartz." And just this little joke. He hits the buzzer. Security. He's like, no. Just the littlest things just make me love. That's what makes me fall in love with this movie. It's the tiny little things.
And in writing, when you write, it's hard to make sure that everything ties together.
Right.
And Kaufman does it so beautifully.
Yeah.
Alluding to the thing you're talking about. I'll set it up that Flores can't hear.
Right.
And then it's going to have a little punch. It's just a subtle thing, but it's got a little punch later with the security.
Right.
Tying all those little things together while still working on the macro, like the big picture.
Right.
He's great at it. He gets into Dr. Lester's office. Dr. Lester gives him a challenge. He says, it's the weirdest. It's the weirdest. In an interview, he says, okay, what does he say? Which one of these symbols comes first?
Right.
And on one side, he has a scribble chicken scratch. And the other side, he has the letter R.
Right.
And Craig goes, the one on the right is not a symbol, sir? And he's like, what does he say?
He goes, damn, you're good.
Yeah. And he delivers it so seriously, like he's really asking.
He's very impressed with it.
Yes, he's like, file set these in alphabetical order, and he gives him a stack of cards, and then Craig quickly does and then he's like, Flores, call Guinness, and he like hits his buzzer, And
I can't remember what she says.
He's so impressed. Yeah, she says something.
And he goes, I'm sorry about this damn speech impediment of mine.
Because he thinks that because Flores misinterprets what he says, that he has a speech impediment.
Right. It's just joke after joke after joke, and that's why Dr. Lester's my favorite.
It's so funny.
He's hilarious.
They then all of a sudden he starts going on about this speech impediment, and then essentially Craig's like, "I can hear you perfectly clear, sir," and he's like, "That's very kind of you."
It's nice. It's nice of you to lie.
Yeah.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Flattery will get you everywhere in this world, boy.
I love it.
Ultimately, Craig gets the job.
Mm-hmm.
He offers him the job. Craig says, "Sir, what's with the low ceilings?" Another joke.
Low overhead. Pass the savings on to you.
You'll find all about it. You'll find out all about it in the orientation video.
It's just, I love it.
And the whole time, I'm just engaged the whole time. I think it's entertaining.
Right.
He goes to the orientation. He gets the job. So this is good. This is a positive outlook for Craig's character. We're like, all right, Craig got the job. And he goes into the orientation meeting, and there's just a few people in there. And they play an orientation video from like the 70s. This is where, once again, Spike shines aesthetically because if you read on the script just in words that there's an orientation video and it probably has some dialogue about but like, how do we make this thing? Like, it's so funny.
It's hilarious. The whole thing's hilarious.
It goes back to the origin of the building. So the orientation video gives the historical perspective of the origin of the building. And essentially, the origin of the building is the Captain Merton, who's some Irish merchant, has built this building. And one day, a lady of miniature proportions,
a little person,
comes into the building and starts ranting about how no buildings are ever built for people of my size and all these things. And it's in this old-timey 1800s language.
Well, the first part is hilarious because he goes, if you want charity, you'll be getting none of it.
Yeah.
And so he's screaming at her.
Yeah.
And then she just...
Be gone with you.
Be gone with you. Yeah. And she just says this little thing, and then all of a sudden he's like, your words have moved me. I'm going to make you my bride, and I'm going to build you a floor.
He kneels down, eye level. I'll build you a floor where people of your stature can come and enjoy. And you're just like, what is going on?
This is an orientation video.
And Captain, but this is what we talked about in terms of the story structure, because Captain Merton comes into play again later in the film, in the story. Because you think in an orientation video, you're like, that's silly.
I actually didn't even put together that it was the same person until you just said it.
He comes in later because it's not really Dr. Lester.
Right.
And we'll get into that. So this is what I mean about the beautiful writing. Not only are you a funny writer, right? Because he's funny, great at developing characters, but the ability to, once again, everything matters. Like everything matters. Sometimes you'll have throwaway scenes or scenes that don't carry as much weight. Everything matters in this film. And I just love how he does it. So this orientation video leads itself into Craig going like, what's going on? And he looks, and a couple people leave the meeting after it's done. And then he looks back and he sees Catherine Keener's character, right? It's kind of the sexy.
And he's been checking her out the whole time.
He's been kind of eyeballing her from the back. Right. And so Catherine Keener's character is Maxine. And she's also new to Lester Corp. And Craig starts to try a dialogue with her that completely fails.
Yeah.
It's like the guy trying to hit on the cute girl.
Right.
And it just totally bombs.
He's very persistent for someone who doesn't seem to have a whole lot of self-confidence.
He don't got no game.
Right.
Craig's got no game.
None.
But he's interested in Maxine from the get-go. So once he's eyeballed her, she kind of like, she calls it out on the orientation. Yeah. Maxine's character is very straightforward.
Oh, yeah.
Very straightforward.
Which is what he likes about her, I think, because he's very polite. He doesn't really say what he's thinking. He's not allowed to. He's kind of forced to live in this world, and she just does whatever the fuck she wants whenever she wants.
Right.
She doesn't care.
She says, that's great that you like the video. It's bullshit.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, she lives free.
Because he looks back and is like, well, that's an interesting story. And she says, it's bullshit.
Right.
She calls it right out. And then it basically moves forward in the story that he's back home, and there's been some conversation between Lottie, his wife, and Craig about having a baby. And you can kind of get and once again, that comes into play.
Right.
So you would think that the smallest thing about having a baby it comes into her desire to have a child. Right. You're like, oh, that's just a throwaway conversation between a husband and wife, where you get the sense that Lottie wants a baby and Craig's like, well, let's see if the job pans out so we can get more established financially. And you're like, oh, that's just a little conversational piece between husband and wife.
Right.
There's more depth to it because it carries more weight later too.
For sure.
So and then Elijah's on the table, the monkey, the chimp. It's just she's talking about he's got to go to the psychotherapy and all these kind of things.
It's just so funny.
It's just it. And then this whole time Craig's been thinking about Maxine.
Yeah.
He's having a conversation with his wife, and this is where Kaufman got the idea, right? We talked about his idea was I want to write a story about a guy who has a desire to cheat on his wife.
Yep. And
this is where it's everything we've described to, this is now where we're getting to a point where that's where the origin came from.
It's bizarre. Yeah.
Because we'll get into it. But the next scene is Craig now in his puppeteer little workshop.
He's made a Maxine doll.
Not only has he made a Maxine doll, but he's converted the former Lottie doll.
Oh, that's true.
He's replaced.
That's true.
So before it was Lottie, and it cuts to a shot of a Lottie doll,
right,
on the wall, and now he's painting Maxine doll and replicating her face to be the interacting partner in the puppeteering.
He plays out this whole fantasy of how the conversation is going to go.
So awkward.
When he talks about why he loves puppetry so much. And, you get to live in someone else's skin. And it just...
And then it has sexual innuendo. And he's like,
right.
Would you like to live in my skin?
Right. It's
and
so nice in here.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
You're like, this is disturbing.
Oh, my God.
And really awkward.
Right.
But still engaging. You're still like, what is going on? Craig he's starting to become a little weird.
Yeah, he's
even more than he was.
He's getting into creepy territory.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
Right.
That's the word I'm looking for. He's beginning to become creepy.
Dude's a creep.
So he's now, but what I love that it does is without having to show without having to give away too much, we get now that Craig is really fascinated by Maxine.
Mm-hmm.
We knew he kind of was, but now he's taking it to the creepy level. But we know his character is fascinated by her.
Right.
Which leads us to some of the follow-up scenes in the office, where the follow-up scene is Craig's trying to start a conversation with her. I was thinking about what you said about the orientation video. I think you might be right. It might be bullshit. And she's like, yeah, and 100 other lines to get in a girl's pants.
And she just knows it.
She knows immediately that he won't. Yeah.
He's not smooth. Like you said, no game.
Then he completely coils up. He's like, that's not what I was trying to say. And he's, very nervous about it.
She would respect him more, though, just knowing her character, if he had just come out and said it.
If he had said it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you get a little hint of that later.
Right.
Then there's this other funny interaction. But Dr. Lester comes back. And...
oh, my God.
Craig's filing away, doing his job. And Flores says, man, those fingers could work some magic.
Why don't you alphabetize me?
Why don't you alphabetize me, Craig? And Craig denies her.
Well, not only that, she goes, I comes before you.
Yeah.
It's so...
But that dialogue, once again, the innuendo behind, it's there, but I comes before you.
Right.
It's just so creative. That's what I mean. Everything. That's what I'm not gonna do is just plod this every way. So, but Craig basically tells Flores, "Hey, look, I'm interested, and we know that he's not talking about Lottie.
Exactly. I'm in love with someone else.
Yeah, and you're like, oh shit, he's talking about Maxine already. Craig's crazy.
Right.
He's already talking about Maxine like he loves her.
And this is the part where I realize that Flores is just fucking with everybody because she goes, I can't understand a word you're saying.
Yeah.
You bastard.
That's true. Yeah. When she doesn't get what she wants and then it goes back to her not pretending like, she
and then here comes the knight in shining armor, Dr. Lester
who loves Flores.
I love that character so much.
It's revealed that and then he comes in and says, if you talk to Flores like that again, I'll box your ears off.
What did he say? If I was 80 years younger, I'd box your ears off.
Box your ears off. How old are you, Dr. Lester? He says 105.
Oh my God.
It's revealed that Dr. Lester's 105.
105.
And immediately you're like, what?
What the fuck is going on?
That doesn't make sense.
No.
How are you 105 and you're the link to the past, Dr. Lester?
Yeah, seriously.
I don't want to be your damn link
But
to
again,
the past.
it's done in a way where it's a little weird, but it's kind of normal. Like he just kind of, shrugs it off.
I don't go, he's not 100. I still go, oh, I guess. And then he starts talking about how he drinks carrot juice and he pisses orange.
Right.
And then he starts talking about how he loves florists. This is, in an office environment, extremely disturbing. It's a very Harvey Weinstein moment.
Yeah, oh, very, very. Only I think Dr. Lester's a little bit more romantic than Harvey Weinstein would be.
He's not so much based in action as he is in sweet talk.
Yes, exactly.
Harvey Weinstein's immediate go to the pants pulled down.
Right, exactly.
Dr. Lester is saying inappropriate things in the office, though, about how he wishes he could be with florists.
Yeah, he's pretty explicit about it, too.
He's very explicit. And Craig's like, whoa, Dr. Lester, maybe you shouldn't talk about this in the environment or the office environment. And he's like, great. I'll meet you at the Juiceteria after work. The Juiceteria.
See, again, this is like out of Airplane. It's like the very literal jokes. Like, surely you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
Right.
It's that kind of joke.
Yep.
And it just, his whole character, maybe that's why I love it, because I love those movies so much.
He's also, he is chalked up as a character as kind of the sweet old man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because, not funny, but when you're old, you can kind of get away with saying things in a way, because especially if you came from a certain, I'm not condoning it, I'm just saying like,
there's a little bit more liberty given.
There's a little more liberty given than if you were born in 1980.
Right.
And you know better than to say certain things.
Right.
Versus if you were born in 1930. Right. And so he's just saying inappropriate things and then basically sets up a meeting for Craig to meet him to get carrot juice.
Just so he can talk about
he can talk about his explicit desires for florists. And Craig's in a position where he can't really say no because he's the boss.
Right, exactly.
And he just got this new job. The funny part is he gets on the phone. The next scene is he's on the phone with Lottie, and he's like, don't worry, I'll be home soon. I just got to listen to all these sexual exploitive, stories of his lustful desires for florists, and then I'll be home.
Oh, my God.
And then he runs into Maxine in the hallway. And actually, Craig gets a little ballsy here.
Yeah?
Yeah, because he says he basically wants to invite her to have drinks.
He physically stops her in the hallway.
Right.
And again, I love the way this plays out. Where he's like, if I guess your name, I get 3 guesses. If I guess your name, awkward. You got to have drinks with me.
It's so awkward. She plays into it.
And she's like, okay. And he guesses her fucking name.
But he does it in the most most comedical way possible. Because he starts out with the first syllable of a name. Flo. And he's reading her face.
Right.
And so. And he gets it.
He gets it.
And then he's all excited about how he got it.
Right.
And she agrees to have drinks. So they go to have drinks. But then it's the scene. Before he has drinks with Maxine, he's got to go.
Dr. Lester.
Yeah. Talk about his sexual exploitation or sexual exploits with florists.
And I love it's at the carrot juice place. It's just so funny. The whole thing is bizarre.
It's bizarre, but it also, once again, it goes by that they make it feel like that's a real world.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
the world of what we're watching.
Right.
It's crazy. Dr. Lester, Craig tells Dr. Lester, hey, I got to go home and have dinner with the wife. Or, he makes an excuse. He's trying to get out of it.
Right.
Because what he's really trying to do is get to the stuffed pig to go have drinks with Maxine.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, Dr. Lester finds a way to invite Lottie and Craig for dinner at his house.
Like, I'd love to meet her. How about dinner on Thursday?
You can come too.
Yeah, you can go. Yeah, it's just the way. It's just so matter of fact. Like
Dr. Lester gets what he wants.
He does.
And poor Craig gets sucked into things. Craig's never been one to. You can tell immediately his character's never been one to really say no.
Right. He doesn't rock the boat.
Mm-mm. He just goes with it. He's gaining confidence, though, because he did ask Maxine to go have drinks.
Yep.
And this scene's awkward because after he leaves Carrot Juice with Dr. Lester, he goes to meet Maxine for drinks, just barely makes it in time. Because she said she would leave at 7, which you believe her. If she says it. She's the opposite of Craig.
Yeah.
If she's gonna do what she says.
Yeah.
She gets there and they have this weird interaction. Craig's nervous. Right. John Cusack's performance in this is so good.
He's so good. He's so good.
It's so believable and he's so awkward and he falls into that character so well.
Right.
Craig is sometimes with me on a John Cusack film, I'll watch it and go, that's John Cusack.
Yeah, we've talked about this with other actors before where you see them. It doesn't mean they're bad performances, but it's them.
It's the Leo effect.
Right. It's
for me we talked about this before, when I see a Leo film, I go, that's Leo.
Right. Right. Same thing with John Cusack, except for in this one.
Not in this movie, though.
He's very good.
I don't exactly. I
forget that it's him.
I think it's Craig Schwartz.
Right. It's Craig Schwartz. Right. It is.
And he's a good actor either way. I just mean
for sure.
This he falls into it so well because this interaction that he has with Maxine is so awkward. And he goes in, like, wants to buy her a drink, and she's very straightforward and like. She thinks the way that he's talking, because he's not sure how to articulate his sentences in a confident way, that and this isn't she thinks that maybe he doesn't even like women.
Right. He's trying to be charming.
He's trying to be
and
charming,
overly coy, and
yes,
I really want to get to know you.
Right.
I'm not interested in sex, that type of thing.
Yep.
And it's so she's like, "What the fuck is going on with you?
Who are you?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Are you homosexual?"
Right.
That's what she thinks.
Right.
And then he's like, "Well, no, I'm not." And she's like, "Are you married?"
Right.
And he's like, "Well, that's enough talking about me."
Yeah. How about you?
He's trying to divert it. And then she's like, something to the effect of like, "You want to have sex?" And he's like, and he's like, she's like, "You're gay. You don't want to have sex."
Right.
And he's like, No. He's like, "I love you. I love your tits. Want to fuck the tits?"
Yeah. Exactly.
And you're like, "What?"
And then she sits back down.
Yeah, she sits back. She's ready to leave.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't believe that Craig is legit.
Right.
For her. And she just totally plays him. And the irony there is that Craig's a puppeteer and she puppets the shit out of him.
Exactly.
This is the great contrast between those, or not contrast, but the great relationship between those characters, which is she is the puppeteer. Part of the bar thing is we were talking about how Maxine is really in a real form the puppeteer of Craig. She can manipulate him, and he tells her that, "I'm really a puppeteer," and she's like, "Check, please." Yeah, she's not interested, and she never really shows any kind of interest towards Craig at all, in the sense of like a more kind of physical relationship or an attractiveness.
I think there may have been something there when he took the initiative and he stopped her and he like kind of played the little game like, let's have drinks. But I think as soon as she found out he plays with dolls, I think she's done.
It's over.
She's done. Yeah.
So, but nothing transpires at the bar. Like nothing, you kind of think, well, maybe she'll open up to him and something will happen and Craig will cheat on his wife or whatever it is, but nothing happens. And then Craig, we kind of jumped the gun a little bit on the puppet build. In the same thing that we already talked about in the scene is Craig builds his puppet around Maxine, right, based on all this infatuation that he has with her.
And this is when he has that fantasy where he explains the joy of being a puppeteer.
Yeah, exactly. Things that he would have wanted to say to her in person, but wouldn't have had the articulation or confidence to do so.
Right.
But then the next day back at Lester Corp, Craig's filing. He's filing away. Yeah. And he drops a file behind a cabinet. And he pulls the cabinet out. And we notice a little door, right? Like a quarter-sized door. And Craig opens the door. And this is where things get Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. I mean, it literally is.
It literally is. That's what I think every time I watch it is like...
It's down the rabbit hole.
We're going down this rabbit hole.
Right.
And that's almost physically what it looks like. He opens this quarter-sized door, and it's just kind of a dirt hole.
Yep.
It literally is, for me, when I watch it, comparable to like a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is going on? And his curiosity gets the best of him. he gets kicked out. Doesn't get kicked out, but he opens the door and he goes down, and it's the door. I love how Spike films this scene. This is the one thing that would be hard in the writing to go, how do I put this into image and sound?
Yeah. You know what I mean? When Charlie Kaufman is sitting there writing this down, I mean, obviously you picture it in your head, but are you going to trust a filmmaker to be able to get this right?
It's hard to translate that from words to image.
I would love to see how the screenplay is written in this part.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what kind of... I would imagine he has depth there.
Sure.
He's Charlie Kaufman.
Sure.
But, man, the translation from words to image is pretty impressive because it still feels believable.
Yeah, it does.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. In a twisted way, it does.
In a very eccentric, twisted way.
Yep.
Craig travels down the rabbit hole. And then you hear the sound effects and everything. And before you know it, we're in a POV shot with a funnel-like image. We're looking as if from the perspective of a character.
Right.
And this character is drinking coffee. And the sound design here is great. It's that muffled. It's like you are the character.
It was good. I think for me, it was just a little too much. I mean, I could have got the point if they would have toned it down a little bit, because there were some times when I would have liked to feel like I was more in the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm nitpicking here. It's really not a big deal, but it was just a little too. I mean, I got the point.
Yeah, and the whole concept is we're literally POV positioned as if we are the whatever character. We haven't seen faces yet. We've just seen a newspaper, a coffee mug, and he gets up, the character walks around to a kitchen, walks out, grabs his keys and wallet, and then looks up in the mirror, and boom, this is the reveal.
John Malcovich.
It's John Malcovich. What? Okay. Still not entire. If you're watching this for the first time, you're like, what?
Right.
You don't know what's really happening.
Right. I thought being John Malkovich was going to be more of a metaphor type of thing,
And that's the beauty of the film itself is like, this is not a metaphor.
No,
so like
this
if
is
you
literally being John Malkovich.
You are John Malkovich.
Right.
So he goes out and you get to experience that moment. He goes down to the street and calls a cab and jumps in the cab and he's going down. And then all of a sudden it basically just cuts to a shot of an empty New Jersey turnpike. And all of a sudden you see a character fly in from like 20 feet above the ground and just smack the ground.
Every single one of these
is so funny.
It doesn't stop being funny. I just wonder how many times they had to do that, just being on set. Like how many times that stuntman have to fall down onto that itchy. And I see like all the weeds and stuff, and I have bad allergies, so I'm just like, oh my god, dude, I would die. I would pop into one big hive and explode.
You're wondering what the hell's going on.
Right.
Because before you know it, Craig is falling from the sky.
Yeah.
He gets up out on the weeds and gets out,
right.
Looks around, looks over, sees a tunnel, sees New York City, and then looks over and sees the tunnel that says New Jersey Turnpike.
Right.
Why? What? Where do you come up with
That's a good question.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
But what is... And so there's no explanation up to this point about what's happening.
Right.
Other than Craig obviously went through some, what he calls, for lack of a better word, supernatural experience.
Right.
He races back to Lester Corp, busts through Maxine's.
Doesn't give a shit
door.
about telling his wife.
Doesn't want to go. He wants to tell Maxine.
He wants
first,
to tell Maxine first thing.
because now he has something to potentially impress her with.
Right.
Goes in and he doesn't say like, hey, check what happened to me. He's like, don't you want to hear what happened to me?
Yeah.
And she's like, not really.
She is so, even when he tells her what happened, she is so disinterested.
She even points to the window.
Right. Because he's like, it raises so many existential questions. And she just kind of gestures at the window, like jump out, man. Jesus.
If nothing matters.
Right, exactly.
Go. He proceeds to tell her that he traveled through a portal that led him into the mind of John Malcovich. And she goes, who the fuck's John Malcovich? And he says, he's a famous actor. He doesn't really know either.
Right. Well, and then the best part, because when he is John Malkovich, the cab driver tries to convince John Malkovich that he played a jewel thief. Even though he's like, I never played a jewel thief.
Hey, you're that actor.
Yeah. I never played a jewel thief. No, I'm sure it was you.
I love that too, because it totally feels. I'm not a celebrity, but I imagine that people that recognize celebrities, they have to get it all the time. Like, no, and then people are so confident.
Right.
Like, no, I'm pretty sure you did. And he's like, no, I didn't. I think I would know.
Well, and I love that because then, again, like you said, it comes back into play.
Yeah.
That one little joke because he tells Maxine, he's like, well, he was in that jewel thief movie. Which indicates that Craig doesn't really know who he is either, necessarily. But he's real excited to tell Maxine about this experience that he's gone through. And by the way, he's all wet and muddy and dirty because he went through the portal of John Malkovich. Yeah.
And so, I think making this this unbelievably surrealist thing feel real. They do it so well.
They do it, yeah.
Because I'm
it's
still
masterfully done.
You are like, okay, what? But at the same time, you're like, this is the world, and I can believe the world.
You're as absurd as it all is. I mean, there's no suspension of disbelief here. Like
exactly.
I'm fully invested, and
I'm
I totally believe it all.
100% in. Like, okay, where are we going next?
Exactly.
Maxine doesn't care though.
No,
she's still not impressed.
She doesn't care.
She just doesn't care.
I mean. Poor Schwartz. He's just trying his goddamn hardest to impress this woman, and she just could not care.
He can travel through a portal to be John Malkovich and still can't get the woman.
And she doesn't even question the validity of it. She's like, oh, she believes him. Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. Whatever.
I gotta go.
I'm lock up after me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go have drinks.
Yeah, I'm out of here. Schwartz gets back home. He's now showered up, wearing a little tight robe because he cleaned up after his experience. Phone rings. It's Maxine. And for whatever reason, something clicked in her. And she says, hey, Schwartzy, baby. Puppeteering him immediately.
Yep.
Something makes her believe. And so she calls him and says, I got an idea. We can turn this into a business.
Make some money.
Because her motivation's money.
Right. Charge $200 a head. We'll let people be John Malkovich.
Show me this thing. Let's do it. And then his character, he's in.
Yeah.
Maxine says jump. Schwartz says how high.
Right.
Let's go.
Because at first he questions her a little bit. Like, I don't know. Should we be doing this? Should
we exploit
ethical?
this? Yeah. Is it ethical? Yeah. Exactly.
And she's like, yeah. He's like, okay.
And then he's like, all right.
We're in. So
they take Lester Corp at night. Basically, that concept is they take it over. So the next day, though, as they're trying to run an ad, they want to call the newspaper, run an ad that says, if you want to be someone else,
right,
$200 a pop, Lester Corp, this time at night, these hours.
Yep.
And while they're kind of going through this and figuring out how to do it, I jumped the gun. I apologize. One thing that we needed to remember is that it's now Thursday. And Lottie and Schwartz Craig are now on their way to Dr. Lester's to have dinner.
That's right.
And so I jumped one scene. So I'm going to backstep. But they're on their way there, and Craig is telling his wife all about the Malkovich experience.
Yep.
And this is the beauty of the world, once again, is that Maxine didn't question him, nor does Lottie.
Right.
She just like, well, that could be.
And he's explained that they're going to have a business.
Yeah.
That they're going to charge.
He's talking about how he has a new business partner, right? And it could make lots of money,
right,
which could help them come out of their financial situation. So, on the way to Lester's house, Lottie's like, he's like, I want to go. She's like, I want to see this thing. Can I come to your business? And he's like, well, he doesn't want Lottie to be there because he wants to hit on Maxine.
Right, exactly.
But he's like, I can take you right now. She's like, before dinner? And he's like, yeah, we could go right now. So he takes Lottie. And this is where things get crazy again. He opens the door. Lottie goes in. She's Malkovich. Malkovich is in the shower. He's scrubbing his privates.
Right.
She thinks it feels good.
She's getting turned on.
She's like, oh, this is how it feels to have a unit.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just this, and she's getting turned on, and it's this kind of sexual thing. While she's inside his head, she's feeling what it's like to be a man.
Yep.
Because she's a woman. She comes, once again, funny, nighttime, she comes flying in to the New Jersey Turnpike, and you do laugh every time.
And she wants to go immediately. She wants to go back.
What I love about this character is up to that point, Lottie has been submissive and more considerate towards Craig.
Right.
And really trying to help him. And Craig has always kind of been, not standoffish to her, but kind of, he's not overly interested in her.
No, not at all. He's in his own little world. He doesn't really care about her. Yeah,
and as soon as she comes out of being Malcovich, she shows no interest in Craig.
Right, she's done.
It's over.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole thing just 180.
Yep.
And she's just, the experience has changed her.
Yep.
It's completely flipped her mindset. And I love she gets even kind of like, take me back. She's anxious. She wants to go back in and be Malcovich.
Right.
And she's talking about this experience and what it meant to be a man. And you're like, what is happening?
What? Yeah.
And so, but she's excited about it.
She loves it.
She loves
She's obsessed.
She's obsessed. She's addicted.
Yep.
Now the next day.
Well, first they go to Lester's.
They go to Lester's first.
And
once again, this is where it all ties in again.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, you know, there's some funny moments with Lester there, and it's great. But ultimately, the whole point of that is she goes up to find the bathroom with one of the 5 doors on his left. And she peeks into a room, and there is a whole timeline of John Malcovich on the wall from when he was a boy all the way through his acting career. And there's pictures of him and like a whole timeline that's been set up.
Shrine-like.
It's like a shrine, right? And so you're thinking, what is going on?
Because how does that tie in?
Right. Now there's a little bit of mystery here.
The mystery box is now like, what?
Right.
Dr. Lester's in on this thing?
Right.
And then you know Dr. Lester owns the building, or at least the floor from the business. And now he has a weird shrine to John Malcovich.
It's bizarre.
Right? So Lottie doesn't divulge that to Craig immediately. She's been through the Malcovich experience. She's now seen this shrine of sorts from Dr. Lester's house, so she knows there's a tie somehow.
Right.
But she doesn't tell Craig. She just goes, wonder what Dr. Lester has with,
what's his connection to...
What's his connection? She's insinuating something.
Right.
But she doesn't straight out tell Craig there's a full-blown shrine.
Yeah.
No, because she's addicted and greedy. She doesn't want to divulge anything. She wants to hold on to that mystery box a little bit. She wants to find out because she's more curious about Malcovich and the portal than she is Craig. Next day, and it's more evident the next day, because Maxine and Craig are running the ad. They're going to try to advertise to get people to come to the portal. Lottie breaks into the office, and she's like, she meets Maxine. And she's like, oh, that's your business partner?
Right.
Oh, she's pretty. You know, like,
and the infatuation already starts a little bit.
She's already interested. She's kind of interested in Maxine. Then she tells Craig that she's a transsexual. She wants to be a man. And when she went through the experience with Malcovich the night before, she now has different feelings.
Yep.
This is how topical this is 20 years later.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And she says, I talked to one of the doctors who's an allergist. Craig's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I want to talk to Dr. something or so-and-so about doing this. And he's like, he's an allergist.
I know, but I trust him.
It's just so...
Because what is it? She wants gender reassignment surgery.
Right.
Because she felt what it's like to be a man, and now she wants to be a man.
Right. But she has to go through Malcovich one more time just to make sure.
She wants to confirm it.
Right.
And then Maxine's all like, let her go, Craig, or let him go.
Right. Let him go. Right.
And so they let Lottie go again. And that's it. That seals the deal.
Yep.
For her, right? She comes out of that experience like, it's official. She literally like stop. She jumps in the car and like races off, and is like,
she's just about to leave Craig there.
Yeah, she's like, leave me alone, Craig.
Yeah. Goddamn Craig.
Craig's out. Craig can't win because Maxine puppets him, and now Lottie, who was affectionate and very,
that was his safety, his
now,
fallback girl.
After experiencing Malkovich, wants nothing to do with Craig.
I mean, just like I said, man, everything's a struggle for Craig. Everything. This dude.
But there's also a little bit of an infatuation with Lottie and Maxine. Lottie is starting to fall for Maxine, right?
And I don't understand. See, I this is the one thing you might be able to shed a little light on because you've seen this more than I have. I get Craig's fascination with Maxine. I get that. The motivation is there. Like he's unhappy with his life. Maxine represents freedom and kind of, being your own person. I don't know what Lottie's fascination is with her. Because it doesn't seem like Lottie is in that same rut that Craig is in.
My interpretation is that she's a transsexual. So her concept being that she wants to be a man, and now she has some form of attraction to Maxine.
Well, she's definitely bisexual.
Yeah. So that's but she didn't know that until she experienced the Malkovich portal.
But why Maxine? Why is Maxine this I don't know, this thing out on a pedestal, this trophy that they're lusting over?
I mean, it's a story structure point, but also, I mean, I think Catherine Keener's good looking.
Oh, for sure,
in the movie. So
but
maybe it's just an attractability.
But there's a deeper want for Craig, and I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough to know what is Lottie's character. What is that character lusting after?
I think it's it doesn't. I think it's because the follow-up scene to that is they have dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So they're at dinner at Craig and Lottie's house, and Maxine is there, and she's playing both of them like a fiddle.
And they're both kind of trying to compete with each other for her attention.
It's very awkward.
It feels like sibling rivalry a little bit.
And you're like, I thought you were husband and wife.
It's bizarre. It's so bizarre.
They both make an attempt to kiss her. And Maxine's like, ew, Craig.
Right.
Craig, I'm not physically attracted to you.
Well, and this is after Francine has contacted John Malkovich.
Yeah, that's true.
And she went and had sex with John Malkovich.
That's a big point to it. We kind of
is.
jumped that because,
And Lottie was inside of John Malkovich while he was having sex with Maxine.
Yeah, that when Lottie came back and they said, and Maxine said, hey, just let her go, or him,
right,
Craig. When she did that experience, Maxine had actually found his number,
right,
and given him a call, and
played him like a fiddle,
and talked all sexy to him.
It's like, oh, I'm a huge admirer. She's never even heard of him.
Yeah,
she has no idea who he is.
But while Maxine's on the phone, Lottie is inside Malkovich.
Right.
And she starts to get an infatuation with how Maxine is speaking. And it may have to do with, like, the confidence. And that's part of it. She even says, like, the confidence about how she talks and how she approaches them. And she's attracted to that. And that actually is a piece to that question we were kind of discussing, too.
That makes sense.
But flashing back to the scene then after that, where they're both kind of infatuated with Maxine, they invite her to dinner, because it is after that where Lottie and Craig are in the car after she's come out of Malkovich, and Lottie's like, maybe we should invite Maxine for dinner.
Right.
You know?
Right.
She's my business partner, though. He doesn't want to.
There's been some tension between us at work, and I don't want to subject you to that.
I don't want to bring that home.
Just his excuses are just such bullshit.
He really wants to keep her to himself.
Right.
And now Lottie has interest. It's a weird dynamic, and you kind of feel for... It's funny because you feel for Craig, but at the same time, you're like, you brought this on yourself, dude.
Yeah, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a cheater.
Exactly. You had this desire.
If you could be, you would be a cheater.
Exactly. You had the desire. Now your wife has the desire.
Right. No one is likable in this story except for John Malkovich.
True.
He's like the only likable character.
And Dr. Lester.
And Dr. Lester, of course.
We love Dr. Lester. But they end up inviting Maxine to dinner, and then it's just this weird scene where they're both infatuated. They both attempt to kiss her. Like we mentioned already, Maxine says, "Ew, Craig." It's just like, I'm not attracted to you.
I have no attraction to you.
But Lottie, sweetie, I love you. She's like, but only when you're in him.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, this girl's crazy. She's crazy.
She's crazy
and manipulative. So she likes Lottie, but only when Lottie is in Malkovich.
Right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, this thing just keeps getting more layers.
But it still makes sense.
And it's still clear. And that's the beauty of it. Like sometimes when you see movies, they can be overly complex.
Right.
And you're really they're still good, but you're like, I don't get it all.
Right.
I'm not sure. Something even like when you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, you're going, I don't know conceptually where everything's at.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to line it up and figure out, time and space and like what's it saying about life and all. You're just like going,
right.
This is so complex, but still simple enough to understand what's happening.
And it's still very believable.
And still believable.
In a weird way.
Yeah. So Maxine wants nothing to do with Craig. That's evident, except for be a business partner.
Mm-hmm.
And Lottie is starting to like Maxine because of her confidence.
Mm-hmm.
All opposing attributes to what Craig has.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep, for sure.
And so maybe that's part of the attraction.
For
as well.
sure.
So Maxine leaves Craig and Lottie's house, and she only wants him in Malkovich.
Mm-hmm.
Or her, sorry. She only wants Lottie in Malkovich. So what ends up happening is there's this scene where she designs it so that after they close the business, Lottie will go into Malkovich at 4:11 and she'll be all prepped and ready to go. She'll go to Malkovich's apartment at 4:11 and they can have sex.
Mm-hmm.
While Lottie's in Malkovich, she'll have sex with Malkovich.
Right.
It's like this is the layering.
And she calls him Lottie, and I actually really.
Well, first off, she comes in and he like fills her up.
Right, and
he's like
"Shall we go?" And he does it in his classic.
He's very John Malkovich.
To the boudoir or whatever the fuck he says. He's very just like that classic John Malkovich thing.
I'm early, honey.
Yeah, and so they're sitting there and just, do you like being an actor? And
she's waiting for the clock to turn 4:11.
Right. And then,
waiting for Lottie to get inside.
And then she jumps on him and he's like, "Did you just call me Lottie?"
They start making out and yeah.
And she goes, "Is that all right? Or do you mind?" And he goes, "Not really."
Can we just give mad props to John Malkovich so far?
He's playing himself in this movie, but he does such a good job, and even better when he's playing other people playing himself.
Him. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
He's so good. He's so good.
How do you? The complexity of that as an actor, I'm playing me, but then I'm playing me with someone else inside me.
And the funny thing is, and I'm sure you were going to talk about this when you talk about all the trivia stuff, but
get into
he turned down this role.
Yeah.
He offered to produce it, but he turned down this role because he didn't think he was right for the part. I can't remember who he said he'd rather see, but eventually they wore him down and like, you got to play this.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'll play it.
And Charlie Kaufman wrote it he didn't have other actors. It was Malkovich all along.
And just think about that. Like,
so
John Malkovich is not, at this time, he wasn't like super famous. Like he's famous. It's like
he's
that.
a theatrical actor. He's more Broadway than he is, I would say, big screen.
Right. And so to write this specifically for John Malkovich.
Except for the awkward exchange going back to when he's waiting for Maxine and the patron of the restaurant comes up and he's like, "Hey, you're John Malkovich."
Right.
Man, I really liked how you played that
retard.
What?
Because my cousin's a retard.
And I really like your portrayal on the big screen. And he's like, "Thank you." He does like his response is fantastic because he's like, "Thank you," but
I'm sure that's how he responds.
But it feels so real,
right?
You know,
it does,
and awkward for them. I feel it's actually it's a great scene to sympathize for actors,
right?
Because you're like, why? What are people doing?
Because I'm sure people are like
all the time,
all the time. Like just say the most insensitive, terrible things
Or just like the weirdest moments where like I can only imagine what it would be. I think it's weird that people like go up and like something even less, a little less subtle, like, can I get a photo?
So
at a restaurant.
So I go to a lot of concerts, right? And we went to see this guy Amigo the Devil, and he's notoriously nice. Like he stays after the shows and he meets all the fans, and he does this on every tour date, and it's got to be just terrible because hours after the show you're still like shaking hands, taking pictures. But we were about to meet him, and there's this girl going on and on about how his music changed her life, and just essentially being Claire from Misery, like I'm your number one fan type of thing, you know, and
getting all Kathy Bates on him.
Exactly. And think of how many times they got to deal with this. And this is a set aside time to meet the fans. Imagine being a super famous actor sitting there at dinner with your family or whoever, and people are coming up and doing that to you all the time.
Isn't that weird?
I don't understand. They feel like because they have a personal connection with your work that it's okay for them to do that.
But it's still so weird.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Look, actors have a great life, especially, well, I should rephrase that. Depends on what stage of acting you're in and what level. But nonetheless, like that's a weird thing, you know? And I think what my point is like in that scene, and like you were alluding to with your experience, is that it makes you sympathize.
For sure.
In a way.
For sure.
And so, but it's just an awkward scene. But going back now, you know, Maxine and Malcovich are getting it on, making out on the couch, furthering the consummating the relationship with Lottie inside of Malcovich. Right. And she asks, "Can I call you Lottie?" He's like, "I guess."
I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So they consummate it, and so now Maxine has had sex with Malcovich, but with Lottie inside.
Right. And
you're like, where did this is? We keep saying this, but like, how do you come up with this?
It's bizarre
concept. It's so great. It's fantastic.
You just have to be in the weirdest headspace.
Lottie comes home, and Craig is like down and depressed,
sulking. He's sulking,
and he knows. And you were in him, weren't you?
Yeah, and you kind of
you were with her.
You kind of see a little. As soon as she opens the door, you see a little bit of pity that she feels for him, just for a second,
for about 0.5 seconds.
Right, exactly. But yeah, he's just sulking on the couch.
He feels so bad that
dude, you started all of this.
Yeah,
all of it,
and he just feels so bad.
Yeah,
he's like, you were with him. With her.
Oh my God.
And he feels bad for himself because he badly desires to be Lottie in Malcovich.
Right.
It's so strange. And so good.
Is this the part where he goes nuts?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're not quite there yet.
Damn
but
it.
We're going to get there so we can get it moving so we're not going too long on it. But so Lottie comes home. Craig is sulking. And then just to kind of get us moving forward, some things spiral. Craig starts getting out of control. He starts feeling it. He's getting upset and pissed off.
Yeah.
That Lottie is going into Malcovich and having sex with Maxine.
Think about this. Craig has been lusting after Maxine.
Yeah, from the get-go.
From the second he saw her.
Yeah.
He's been planning to cheat on his wife. Every attempt that he has tried to make, every pass he's tried to make at Maxine has failed. It seemed like things are going well, and he may have a chance because he was assertive, but then he opened his mouth and told her that he's a puppeteer, so immediately cut off. But now, in comes his wife and just immediately starts banging her. Immediately. And so he's just going nuts.
And also now shows no interest in Craig.
And now, yeah.
She's like, I'm done with Craig.
His safety girl doesn't give a shit about him anymore.
And the concept of the story is like his character just spirals downward.
Exactly.
We'll kind of move into a scene where it really exemplifies Craig's distraught and lost his mind. Because
it's pretty funny, too.
Lottie returns and ultimately Craig is hiding under the table, and we're jumping a little bit just to move it forward. He's under the table.
Something.
He with a gun. She comes in, and he basically sneak attacks Lottie.
And he charges her.
Grabs her, throws her on the ground, pins her.
Well, and I think the funniest part to me in this whole scene is when she says something like, "Is that a real gun?" And he goes, "Yeah, and I don't really know how to use it, so I wouldn't make any sudden movements." And she immediately bolts.
Yeah.
Just immediately. And it's just a great. This is what I mean when I say it gets dark, but I still love it.
Yeah, I mean, it
'Cause
gets
it's
dark.
hilarious.
He's on the verge of like threatening and killing and domestically abusing his wife.
Yeah, he's trying to.
But he gets her back. He pins her down. He makes her call Maxine.
Yep.
And say, "Meet me in Malcovich."
Yep.
And so ultimately what they do that, and Maxine they figure out a time. But before that, it's all part of Craig's plan.
Mm-hmm.
Craig's like, "Meet me in Malcovich," and after they set the meeting time, after they close the JM Incorporated, that's the business, he locks up his wife in a cage.
In Elijah the monkey's cage. Tapes her mouth with duct tape, rope. It's like, oh shit, it's getting serious.
Right. But it's all for the fact that he wants to be in Malcovich and have sex with Maxine.
Right. And he does.
And he succeeds.
And it's amazing for him.
For him, it's so good that now Craig the puppeteer is the human puppeteer.
Because I don't even remember what happened, but Malkovich is so good. Like the real John Malkovich is so good because he just like bursts out this crazy ass sound.
Before that, it's inner dialogue of Craig talking.
Uh-huh.
So he's in Malkovich, and you hear Craig talking to Malkovich, saying, "Move hand across right breast."
Right.
Left hand across right breast.
Right.
And then he does it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, Craig is manipulating he's puppeteering Malkovich.
Uh-huh.
And then it goes to that thing where he blurts out, because Maxine's like, "Oh, Lottie, is that you?" And she's like, "I love you," or whatever. And Craig's, "I love you too."
I love you.
And Malkovich has to be Craig.
Right.
Trying to be it's just this crazy amalgamation of characters.
And then of course Malkovich says, "That wasn't me. I didn't say that." What?
Yeah.
And so now he's starting to get
freaks
paranoid.
him out.
He's starting to get paranoid.
He actually stops. He's like, "That wasn't me." And
Right.
she's like, "Oh, honey, that was just your passion taking over." Right. He's like, "I know my passion. I know what my passion is."
Oh my God.
And Malkovich leaves completely distraught.
Yeah.
Because he's now realizing that there's something in him that's causing him to do these things.
But don't worry, because his buddy Charlie Sheen's going to help him out. And this is the best cameo
This
ever.
cameo is one of the best cameos
because
ever.
it's Charlie Sheen being Charlie Sheen.
Oh my gosh.
Especially what we know about him now.
Oh yeah.
Like even back then we didn't.
Tiger blood all the way.
Right. We knew that he was probably living a fun lifestyle.
Winning.
Yeah, winning. But this is before the winning. This is before
I know, but
all of that
in this
shit.
scene he's winning.
He is winning all the way.
Malkovich has gone crazy. He's basically Malkovich is just divulging everything. He's so concerned about this idea that wasn't me. Something caused me to do this thing. And then Charlie Sheen and him start this dialogue about how it could be Lottie could be a former lover, and then it leads into like Lottie could be, or Maxine could be a witch.
Right.
And
Charlie's like, even better.
Even better. Witches? He's like, "Wait a minute, were you smoking? Were you high?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course I was high.
That has nothing to do with it.
That has everything to do with it." So Charlie Sheen's just chalking it up to weed. But Malkovich knows something's not right. And that cameo is fantastic, like you mentioned. It's so fun.
It's so good.
Charlie Sheen on Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, did Kaufman write that?
I know.
He had to have.
He had to have.
It's like, what is going on? Malkovich is so concerned, though, that he follows Maxine. So the next night, he's like, "Where's this girl going? I got to do some I got to do some research."
And he gets into their company. JM Inc. is the name of their company.
Yes.
Infiltrates his way in. And
he's got a hat on.
That'll disguise him.
That'll disguise him. And he's going through, like, there's a line of people.
Right.
And they're like, he's like, "What is this place?" And they're like, "This is where you get to be John Malkovich for 200 clams.
200 clams.
And he starts moving up the line, and everyone's like, no butting in line.
And a whole ruckus ensues.
A whole ruckus ensues because he's skipping the line.
Right.
It reminds me, quick side note, it reminds me of 1999 when I stayed in 27 hours out in front of a theater for Star Wars,
Oh my God.
for Phantom Menace.
Oh God.
Right, me and my buddies. I was 18, 17.
Phantom Menace.
I was a senior in high school. Lay off.
No, I understand that. I'm just thinking of what a disappointment that
yeah.
had to be when you waited outside for 27 hours and you got that piece of shit.
But there was a line of over 2,000 people, literally waiting, and we were there for the first 10 hours, and we started to see people butting in line.
Oh.
And my buddy, my friend Eric, from the back, you hear him go, "Scrape him off!" And no joke, everyone sees him butting. And you get hundreds of people going, "Scrape him off."
Oh, my God.
And the security came and pulled him out of the line.
That's scary.
The point is, this is a ruckus that ensues. There's a line of 200 people at the Malcovich portal, and Malcovich is skipping the line, and everyone's pissed.
I can't. I gotta ask. Okay?
Dude, it was crazy.
I gotta ask.
The Star Wars line.
So, 27 hours. You walked out of the theater. What did you think?
Initially, I was fine with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you got blinders on.
True.
So you're so amped up with adrenaline.
Right.
And you've been doing this thing. You're like, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay.
Later, more analysis comes to play.
Reality sit in a little bit.
And I'm actually not as hard on it at the prequels as most people.
The first one was terrible.
I'm not.
The other two are. I like the third one actually.
I think the stories are fine. I just think the execution's horrible.
Yeah.
I think the story is fine in terms of the storyline. The midichlorians is one thing, but beyond that,
Well, the best part of the movie. I mean, we don't turn this into a Star Wars thing, but the
everything
best part
can
of the
always
movie,
turn
Darth
into-
Maul is like gone. Like he's not even in it.
Darth Maul is the best part of the movie.
Right.
But nonetheless, the Malkovich line is similar. Like, people are in a ruckus. They're like, he gets pushed over, shoved over, his hat falls off. It's revealed that Malkovich is at the Malkovich portal, and everyone's like, and Craig runs up and's like, "Mr. Malkovich,
Right this way, sir.
right this way, sir." He brings him right up to the portal, closes the door, and Malkovich is distraught because he sees Maxine, and he's like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Right.
It is Malkovich town. I love his delivery, and he basically says, "Well, sir, we have a portal, a simulator of sorts,
Simulator.
being you." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And Maxine's all like, she's once again playing the whole thing.
Right.
She's like, "Just let him try, Craig. Let him go through the portal." And so he opens the door, and sure enough, Malkovich goes through the portal. And one of the greatest scenes.
My mind popped a fuse. Like, it just exploded. It was bizarre. The thing, it just tripped me out so bad seeing children with John Malkovich's face.
Children and boobs with Malkovich's face, and everything's Malkovich. They can't say any other words. Everything's with the insinuation of Malkovich.
And when he yells out, "Malkovich!" I'm just like, oh my God. This thing is, what the fuck?
Or when it cuts to
Charlie
him,
Kaufman, what the fuck have you done?
or when it cuts to him on the piano, and he's dressed in the nightgown, and he's singing in a crooner voice. Malkovich.
And you know what? Props to him for doing this, because there's a lot of weird stuff in here where he's really putting himself out there.
That scene, and then also not only that, yes, and the writing of like, "Kaufman, where are you going with this?" This, but then also, once again, you fall back to the execution of how Spike shoots it, and you're like, it's so well done.
It is. It really is.
But he travels into a portal of himself, and he's surrounded in a world of just Malkoviches everywhere. And it's so funny. He gets spit out onto the New Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah.
Schwartz is there waiting for him. Malkovich is furious.
That was no simulation.
That was not a simulation. No man should ever see what I just saw.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine being in right now, like you're me?
That's my worst nightmare.
That
is my
yourself?
worst nightmare.
Isn't that? It would be so crazy.
Uh-uh.
And Malkovich is like, "That is my head, Schwartz." It's so funny.
It's like, with all due respect, I found the portal.
It's
my head.
And then he's like, "I will see you in court." He's like, "Not if I see you seeing me in court,"
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
You're like, "Oh my gosh, this thing, the complexity just grows."
Well, and then the dude driving by with, and I saw this thing that says that this was a just a drunk extra So this is the story, and I don't know if I believe it.
So the guy drives by and yells Malkovich and throws and hits a can.
Yeah,
across his
so a
head.
car's driving by
on the New Jersey Turnpike.
And a guy pops out the passenger side window and says, "Hey, Malkovich, think fast." And he hits him directly in the back of the head with a beer can. And the story is that this was a drunk extra, and they snuck beer onto the set, and they ended up doing it, and Spike Jonze loved it so much that they kept it in, and now the guy's got a SAG card because he has a line in a movie. But the thing is, it was shot too well. You could hear him too well. And
they could have dubbed that. Though.
They could have, for sure. But the throw was just so dead on, and Malkovich's reaction was not that of surprise. Like it was.
It's frustrating. I felt he says, "Fuck."
Yeah, he does. But you would think if you're on a set and something like that happens, you're gonna pop around and be like, "What the hell just happened?"
Yeah, you're like,
so.
Yeah, so I don't know.
If that happened, I'm guessing maybe there was a mistake, and Spike Jonze like, "All right, let's do it again."
Yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
it wasn't the spur of the moment thing,
but
it's a cool story.
It's funny.
Right? It's hilarious.
And if the guy got a SAG card, like all the better for him.
Seriously, he's just an extra. He gets drunk and he walks out with a SAG card.
But we walk away. Malkovich is in his own head.
Right.
And we're like, oh, it's so good. Things just spiral out of control. It goes back. Craig has discovered that he can manipulate Malkovich.
Mm-hmm.
He's discovered that he can puppeteer a human.
Right.
You're like, what? And he comes back and Lottie's in the cage and he feels bad. He does. But then all of a sudden he flips on a dime and doesn't feel bad again.
Well, and they have their little heart-to-heart.
Yeah.
And
Craig's like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? He's like sobbing.
Yeah. And she's like, you're not a bad person, and I gotta go to the bathroom and take a shower. And he opens the cage, and she's just like, finally. And you think that he's gonna let her out, but
right?
No, it's Maxine getting another phone call.
Maxine's getting another call because Craig wants to go back, and he says, "I did it. I've done it. I ran Malkovich's hand across your girlfriend's glorious tit. It's only a matter of time before I can control his whole body."
Oh my God.
And so he's actually playing Lottie because he's saying he's a bad man.
Right.
He opens the cage. He gets Lottie to call. He sets another.
And you know what? In a twisted way, that is actual character growth. That's a character arc right there.
Yeah, he's gaining a little confidence.
He is.
And as a result of gaining the confidence, he's now controlling. He's becoming the thing he's always wanted to be.
Exactly.
Once again, we go back to the writing style, the structure, and like everything matters. Like Kaufman does not miss. There's no holes.
No.
There's just not.
Right.
But he sets it back up. But in the meantime, as he's going back to try again to puppeteer Malkovich and be with Maxine, Lottie's in the cage.
Yep.
And she's with Elijah.
And this is where
this push-in shot.
Elijah's childhood trauma comes back.
Alive.
Oh my God.
And it does a flashback in the jungle of his parents getting trapped by trappers.
Oh my God.
And he runs down, and it's all with a POV cam from Elijah's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He runs up to real chimps, and they have subtitled dialogue.
Monkey subtitles.
That says, "Hurry and let us out. Elijah, save us before they come back."
And he can't untie him.
But he can't untie the rope. They've tied rope around their wrists. He can't untie it. He's unsure how to do it. And it cuts back to Elijah in the cage, and he's looking at the rope on Lottie's hands.
Oh my God.
And he's like shaking his head. He's like, he's reliving the trauma.
Right.
And he reaches down, and he's able to do it this time.
Yep.
And he unties Lottie.
And
So
Elijah's
he's gotten over his childhood trauma.
Elijah's complex character arc is now complete.
That's right.
He's conquered his demons.
He's conquered. No more psychotherapy. Oh gosh.
It's hilarious. It's just so great.
And so he frees up Lottie. Oh my gosh. It's so funny.
It's amazing.
And
then so Lottie just calls and not confesses, but says, "Hey, that's not me."
It's not me. And Maxine, at this point, once again, manipulates because she's like, wait a minute, Craig's been in there?
And she's impressed.
And because Craig, but she's impressed because she's starting to realize Craig can control Malkovich, which means, and she even says it, she says, Craig can control Malkovich and I can control Craig.
Exactly. Well, and the part where she comes over and Malkovich doesn't want to let her in. And I can't remember what she says, but she gets him to open the door, and that's all she needs.
Yeah.
And then he does the whole thing. Yeah. Craig, is that you? Yeah. It's just the way John Malkovich
plays Malkovich playing
it's just unbelievable.
It's great. The concept of the story moving forward is essentially that now that Maxine knows that Craig is inside Malkovich, he's figured out a way to basically stay inside of Malkovich and control Malkovich. And now, like we mentioned before, Maxine, in her conniving way, says, I can control Craig. I own John Malkovich. Right. In a sense.
And the way John Malkovich, again, plays John Cusack character, the way he plays Craig
is so...
It's just, it's a great performance.
There's a scene where, speaking to that, where Craig, a.k.a. Malkovich, and Maxine have had sex, and you hear Craig tell Maxine, I think I found a way to control him and he'll never leave. And she's like, why don't? And she tells Craig, well, you're a puppeteer. Why don't you do a dance for me?
Oh, that whole dance is...
And it's the dance, and Malkovich does the dance, or I should say Craig does the dance inside Malkovich.
Right.
But the dance is the dance at the beginning of the very first scene of the film, right? It's that same scene with Craig doing the puppet, but now he's doing it in real life.
And now he's doing it shirtless with just a blanket
wrapped
tied around his waist.
With just this overly dramatic...
And this is why I'm saying, like, props to John Malkovich for doing this movie, because he's really putting himself out there.
So funny.
It's amazing.
He basically is now in Malkovich, and Lottie is distraught now. She goes back to visit Dr. Lester, and Dr. Lester, because she knew, remember, when she saw the shrine, she knew that there was some kind of tie, and now Craig's in Malkovich permanently, and she goes back to Lester and starts explaining to this thing, and then we get a little concept about the Malkovich portal through Dr. Lester. He starts to reveal to Lottie about these vessels, where you can continue to live.
Well, and he says, I'm not Dr. Lester.
And part of that is that he says, I'm not Dr. Lester, I'm Captain Merton.
Right.
So he's the guy from the orientation video, and he's been living in Dr. Lester the last so many years. And what they found out was that Malkovich is their next vessel.
Right.
But you can only enter the vessel to stay in it permanently, unless you're Craig. Because Craig's a puppeteer.
He's a puppeteer.
You can only go into the vessel on their 44th birthday. So they had been priming Malkovich to go in. He had been priming to go into that as a...
What I didn't understand, though, was how can he bring all these people with him? Because he introduces Lottie to all these people, and they're all planning to go inside Malkovich. Are they all vessels? Or are they just regular people?
My thought is that they're just... So Dr. Lester was formerly Captain Merton. The other people that he's going to bring in, when he introduces Lottie to this other group of old people, it's just friends that he's made, that he's now said, we'll all go together into the vessel.
But I still don't understand how that works. Is there one person controlling?
It's a collaborative. My guess is that it's a collaborative effort, right? Okay. Everybody's there consciously and has to kind of make decisions together.
Okay.
Is the thought.
Cool.
So they're still living forward in life, but they're doing it as a, what's the word? A cohesive unit.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But the concept is, we now know that there are these vessels and Malkovich is a vessel. And the goal of Lester was to use Malkovich to continue living. And now he's explained all this to Lottie, and now the group, including Dr. Lester and all his friends, have invited Lottie to enter the vessel of Malkovich on his 44th birthday.
Yep.
The problem is they can't enter it because Craig's too powerful.
Mm-hmm.
He controls Malkovich.
Yep.
Right. And kind of moving forward, it's this great thing where John Malkovich, this scene where he goes to his agent.
Oh, it's great.
He goes to his agent and he's like, I don't want to be known as an actor anymore. I don't want to be an actor. I want to be a puppeteer. I want to be known as a puppeteer.
Agent's like, yeah.
Yeah, we can make a few calls.
Yeah. No problem.
And then it does this funny thing where it flashes forward like 9 months. And over that course of time, in the media and in everything surrounding Craig's life, he's become this artistic, masterful puppeteer.
Right.
He's essentially, in many ways, become Derek Mantini, the person that Craig idolized at the beginning of the film. And he's now reached his goal to be an elite, famous puppeteer.
Yep.
But as John Malkovich.
Mm-hmm.
This compilation of video is so funny. It shows Craig or Malkovich sit down and watch. He's like on it's not 60 Minutes. I can't remember what it is, but it's one of those, news programs where they do little stories on stars and celebrities, and they're doing one on Malkovich. and they're talking about his transformation from actor to a renowned puppeteer.
Right.
And it has all these celebrities in there.
Sean Penn's in there.
Sean
He's like,
Penn's.
I don't want to do it too soon. I don't want to transition too soon to a puppeteer because it'll seem like I'm just following.
They're gonna call me a copycat.
Yeah, they're gonna call me copycat. Yeah.
But the way they set it up in this newsreel is that Malkovich is this hugely famous person from a puppeteer standpoint, and he's teaching classes at like high-end universities like Juilliard and puppeteering and like doing big shows and puppeteering, and like it's just so good.
Right.
It's so fun to watch the exposition of this build of this character as a puppeteer. And then the other cameos in that little build up in the newsreel, the Brad Pitt one.
Pitt. Oh my god. It's so good. Just that one look he gives.
And David Fincher.
Yeah.
Director David Fincher. Who's one of the critics or something from the LA Times or something. But this reel is so fun. It's so creatively done, and it gives exposition. And what we learn is that Craig, a.k.a. Malkovich, is now married to Maxine. And as Craig's watching, or Malkovich is watching this newsreel, it cuts to a scene back in the bedroom of their home, and it shows Maxine constructing or kind of putting together a nursery. She's pregnant.
Right. and she's also got the Lottie doll.
She has the Lottie doll. So now she's reflecting on how she really liked Lottie.
Right.
And so it's this twisted thing of relationships.
Right.
Where she thought she wanted...
It's a bizarre triangle.
That's the most bizarre triangle.
Yeah. That ever existed. And so Craig has a performance, and Malkovich as Craig in that scene's so funny when he's watching the newsreel and then he's talking to Maxine in the back, and he's like, I got to go do the benefit. Right.
He's doing a puppeteer show, a big, extravagant puppeteer show. He's like, I think I look good. I look good. He's talking about the newsreel. But how Malkovich performs it is so funny. And then he's like, man, I at least couldn't have gotten into a younger, stronger body.
What if I fall and break my knee?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
And he goes to this event and does this extravagant, once again, kind of simulating Derek Mantini. He's like the new. And while he's gone, he's going to come back and celebrate his 44th birthday with Maxine. But when he gets home, Maxine's gone. And he gets a call. And the call's Dr. Lester. And he's like, we've kidnapped your fucking wife.
Oh, my God.
You better get out of Malkovich now.
Trying to be so intimidating.
He trying to be so intimidating. And Craig is even like, but if I get out of Malkovich now, I'll just be Craig Schwartz.
We got your wife.
And he's like, we got your wife. And so he doesn't immediately get out. He goes and actually starts like, he has a drink. Yeah. He's trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they have captured Maxine and kind of tied her up. And Lottie and Dr. Lester and all of their friends are at the portal because they're ready to get into the
Yep.
vessel during the birthday or at the birthday. And Lottie flips because she really does like Maxine.
Right.
And she sees Maxine pregnant, but she feels betrayed by Maxine.
Mm-hmm.
And she just randomly pulls out a Craig gun and is like, you know.
And then they go into Malkovich and they have a chase through his subconscious.
This way this is filmed is so fun to watch.
It is. It really is.
And so dark and twisted and like it going through subconscious of like him getting teased by kids in elementary, being bullied, him beating himself up in the sense of like, I'm a bad kid, I'm a bad kid. Him smelling and sniffing women's underwear.
Oh my God.
Him on a couch with another woman and the woman says, "You're weird."
And this is a lot very reminiscent of Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. Obviously another Charlie Kaufman script.
Yeah.
And so you could see kind of a little bit of that, but it was just fun the way Spike Jonze filmed it.
It's great. It's a great scene. It's so well put together. But essentially what's happening is that Lottie is chasing Maxine through Malkovich's subconscious, wanting to kill her.
Yeah, because you said, if I can't have you, I don't.
No one else will.
Yeah, right.
Then it cuts to the New Jersey Turnpike, and the two of them fly out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this rain, and they're on the New Jersey Turnpike. They've come out of the consciousness of Malkovich, and now Maxine's almost feeling a little bit of warmth towards Lottie and wanting to tell her the truth. And they're like, you know, then she drops the bomb, and she says to Lottie, "It's yours. The baby's yours."
This just sums up the entire movie.
I got pregnant while you were in Malkovich.
Right. You're the father.
Mother, whatever.
Yeah. It's perfect. I love it.
I love it too.
Sums up everything.
I'm like, what? Because when you first watch it, you don't expect that.
Right.
And then you start, oh my gosh.
It's insane.
So Lottie and Maxine are the parents of the baby inside Maxine.
Right.
From the perspective of.
And meanwhile, Malkovich calls up Dr. Lester, and he's like, "All right, I'll get out of him.
I'll do it."
Craig's like, "I'll get out of him."
Because he does love Maxine.
He does.
He's or he's at least infatuated with her.
And so he gets out of Malkovich, pops out on the side of the New Jersey Turnpike, and sees
only to see Maxine and Lottie hugging and like reconciling their relationship.
They get someone to pull over, and I love this. They get in the car, and they're like, "He's not with us. Just go.
Just go." And Craig's left in the rain,
right.
isolated and alone, and yelling for Maxine, "I love you."
Right.
He like wants to, you know, the goal that he had in the beginning is still there. He did it. He got out of Malkovich for her. And even after he sees his wife and Maxine leaving, he still wants
Everything's
Maxine.
a struggle.
He never wins.
Nope, he never wins. Even when he won, he didn't win.
Now that he's out of Malkovich, then Dr. Lester and his little crew can now enter the subconscious of Malkovich.
Yep.
And they do. And then in the slightest little turn at the end, we know that because Maxine's baby, a.k.a. Malkovich's baby, a.k.a. what's the Lottie's baby,
right?
Like whatever, however you look at it, is the seed of Malkovich,
right?
So is also a portal. The baby's the kid. The kid is also a portal, and it cuts to this scene where it's Lottie and Maxine at a pool with a child, which is obviously their kid. It's like 7 or 8 years old, little girl, and they're having a good family time.
It's a happy family.
It's a happy family.
Right.
And then the last scene, the girl wants to go swimming, and before she jumps into the swimming pool, it shows her look over at her mom's, right? And it cuts to a POV shot.
It's Craig's voice.
And it's Craig's voice. So he's inside the portal because he went in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
He's now in the child, and you hear Craig say, "Maxine,
look away, look away."
And then
poor guy.
And then it's a roll credit.
Yep.
This film, Alan,
I feel like we've just been through a whirlwind.
I know that we didn't even cover everything that we wanted to. This is a film that could be 2 podcasts long.
Oh, totally. I'm just making sure we still have time on the camera.
We're still rolling. How would
Okay.
we'll sum it up here. But this is a this could be a 2-podcaster.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But I love the movie. I think it's evident. The whole time, all we did was just rant and rave how great it was. Give me how many times you've kind of seen the film and kind of where you rate it, kind of your summation.
Well,
of it.
it's weird, and I can't tell you why, but I've seen the first half like 5 times. And for whatever reason, I just never finished it. I don't know if just something came up. I just don't know why. Because it's not like I wasn't interested. I never would have turned this off by choice. So I'm not sure why. But this is the first time I've seen it all the way through. And I just fucking love this movie. I just love this movie. I love everything about it. The writing, the direction, the acting. I think everyone's fantastic in it. I even like Elijah the Chimp. Like it's such.
Elijah the Chimp's great.
It's just my type of movie. I can't explain it any more than that. I'm not a very high grader typically, so I have Texas Chainsaw Massacre at a 9 because that's my favorite movie. I can't put it quite there.
Can't get it up.
I'm going 8.5.
It's pretty good though. 8.5 is pretty good. 8.5 what?
8.5. Oh, I got to think about that. 8.5 puppets.
Okay. All right, I'll go with it.
8.5 puppet strings.
So here's a couple things that we'll throw out there that are fun, some fun factoids, and we'll jump into the ratings first, actually. So the IMDb's got this at 7.7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes is a 93% from the critics and an 87% from the audience, right? The Roger Ebert score, which, by the way, 93% is pretty good for critics.
That's very good, yeah.
The Roger Ebert score, he's got it at a 4 out of 4, right? And so everybody's kind of coming in hot on these ratings. A couple facts, a couple fun little tidbits that I thought were interesting and some that I did some research on. Charlie Kaufman said the only choice to play the title was Malcovich, always.
For sure.
For sure. And Kaufman said it wouldn't have worked in my mind with anybody else.
Yeah.
This is like the forward thinking of like knowing that John Malcovich is the right character for this and how it plays together so well. What's interesting about the script is that it finds its way to Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of the biggest directors of all time, right? He reads it and he goes, it's not for me. But at the time, Coppola, he got it. He got his hands on this script.
I cannot picture him even being in the realm of the right director for this.
But when he first read the script, it wasn't his thing, right? But he got it. And what ended up happening was that Spike Jonze is married to Sofia Coppola from like 98 to 2000. 99 to 2003. They were married.
I didn't know that.
So as a result, Jones, it's his former father-in-law now, but at the time it was his father-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, this is right up Spike's alley.
Yeah.
So he gave him the script. He called Malcovich on Spike's behalf because at this point, Spike had committed with Kaufman to make the movie. And so they used the father-in-law card to get Malcovich on the phone. Malcovich wondered if he had somehow wronged Kaufman in the past. The two had never. Oh my God. The two had never met. They had never met.
That's great. That's great.
How do you write this? You've never even met the person.
Well, and this is the thing that's so wonderful. One of the many things that's so wonderful about this movie. Malcovich is like a classic theater actor doing Shakespeare and stuff like that, and then he's doing like, how do you?
That's why I love him.
Exactly. I don't care how much prodding and pushing it took. He still took this role.
It's interesting, too, that Coppola has a role in helping the movie kind of gain momentum.
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty
cool.
All the studios were like, no.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Robert Shea at New Line, who did all the Nightmare series and all those, was like, okay, we'll do it. And then he dropped the project. The day after they kind of committed to it, they dropped it because they wanted to know why the movie couldn't be Being Tom Cruise.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Now, funny enough, Malkovich's first question was, why isn't it Cruise?
Right. And I could see it. It wouldn't be as good, but I could see it.
It wouldn't be as good.
You can't have
I like Tom Cruise, but
you can't have an A-list type of guy. You got to have like a Patrick Stewart or a John Malkovich.
it's only John Malkovich.
Yeah,
It's the thing about it.
For sure.
It's just crazy. But all the studios passed. They didn't get it. They're not giving you money for it. And so some of the producers, including Michael Stipe from REM.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw he was credited, as a producer.
So he helped get the ball rolling. Just as a side note, which we talked about before, like the crew also did not recognize Diaz as Lottie. When she was on set the first day, they were like, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
They didn't realize it was Cameron Diaz. John Cusack found the script because he asked his agent for an insane one.
I like it.
He said William Morris was his agency, and he said, "Give me something, the most unpredictable, crazy thing you've ever seen come across your table." And this was it.
He got it. He got it. And he killed it.
It says he wanted it immediately.
I like it.
He's like, "This is mine."
This movie's the reason why I love him so much.
Well, it's like we talked about. He's Craig Schwartz.
For sure.
It's crazy. He does such a great job. They found Dr. Lester on a late night talk show. That's the actor. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. They saw him on a late night talk show. Catherine Keener didn't like her own character.
Yeah, I can see why.
She didn't like the character,
Right.
but she plays it great.
Right.
She got the Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination.
I like
for
that.
her performance. This is the greatest part. You were talking about Malkovich because his thing was like he wanted to push Kaufman and Jones to keep going with the satire.
Really?
That's what it says.
Good for him.
His thing was always because they were I bet there's a little nerve about like, should we do this? His thing was always turn it up.
I like it. I like it.
He said, "Who better to make fun of than yourself?"
Yep. I agree.
Your impotence, your vanity, your ridiculousness, and then just say, "It's okay. I am ridiculous.
Yep.
I'm mean. I'm a celebrity." It's sort of like a human sacrifice to offer yourself up for ridicule and scorn to make a point about the society that we live in. And that's one thing we wanted to touch on.
I don't
briefly.
think it was that tough on him.
No.
He came across as very nice and level-headed.
He's great. Anybody that can laugh at life and understand that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always love that. The script originally was Kevin Bacon as the buddy, not Charlie Sheen.
Works better with Charlie Sheen.
It works better. I could still see Kevin Bacon.
I can see Kevin Bacon too.
And it would still be funny.
Right.
But Charlie Sheen is better. And actually, Kaufman's choice was to do his friend because they're friends.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Charlie Sheen?
Yeah. So Malkovich was like, "Let's get Charlie."
Yeah, I like it.
We know that David Fincher made an uncredited cameo, one of the greatest directors in modern times, I would say. You mentioned it. It says that the beer can toss was nailed on the first try.
I just
but I know we're not stuck on it.
It was too perfect. Why would you be rolling on that shot of him walking away? It just doesn't make sense to me.
And one of the coolest things is that Kaufman and Jones have just decided not to explain what the movie is. And that's the question that leads to this last little bit that we'll finish up the podcast here. But it says that they agreed, the writer and director agreed that Malkovich had his own guess to what, but he says, "I think it's about acting, opening the door into a mind of someone else and how escaping your own mind for 15 minutes, you see the beauty and fascination and eroticism even in the most boring things. I think it's about the need to escape yourself for 15 minutes that everyone feels. But what it's really about is something more sinister. It's the idea that we now lead virtual lives. We live our joys and sorrows and foibles through the lives of public people. It's about the end of art because art has to take its cue from life." That was Malkovich's. And Kaufman and Jones just don't have any explanation.
I like that.
for it.
I think that's how it should be. For sure.
But for me, like, what do you think it's about? What do you take away from it? Is there a meaning to it?
There is. I honestly have to
the-
sit with it a little bit longer. To me, it's really about trying to escape.
Yeah.
It's
That-
the whole thing, even being locked in a cage, like literally that part is about escaping. And I think that's the overall theme of this movie.
This is, and I agree with that. I think it's about the perception that someone else. There's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of subtext, and we could dive into it more deeply. This is why it's a 2-podcaster.
Yeah.
But for the brevity of this ending here, I think it's about the idea that we're not always satisfied with who we are, and we want to become or do or be somebody else, and oftentimes there's not really kind of any solid or solidified ending to that. Like, it doesn't necessarily make things better.
Well, and that actually applies even more today, because you see these people on Instagram and all the social media like portraying their lives as something so glamorous and amazing. Yeah. And you want to be that, and you don't feel like you stack up. So
yeah,
I think you're right.
Analogous position to have more modern in a modern sense with social media and things like that. And then the comment, I think the 15 minutes is pretty on the nose. Yeah. He's like, you get 15 minutes in Malkovich, it's 15 minutes of fame, the common cliche. Love this film. Absolutely lit. I told you it's in my top 10, and I mean it. It's Charlie Kaufman, to me, is a modern genius as a writer when it comes to pure creativity. When you write, we talked about adaptation already. Of course, another favorite of mine that's up there is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. Charlie Kaufman also wrote and directed this really great movie called Syndicated New York. Oh. It's really good. It stars Philip Seymour Hoffman. And it's just...
I have to watch that.
It's just, I mean...
Have you seen Anomalisa?
I have.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't stack up for me to some of these others that we just mentioned, but it's done well. It's like everything he does has some form of validity.
And this is stupid, but did you ever watch that show Get a Life with Chris Elliott back in the day? He wrote 2 episodes. Wow. It was absurd.
Yeah, he's the newspaper kid.
I loved it.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
that's the right one,
that's
right?
the one.
Yeah.
I loved it. He wrote 2 episodes of that. That was where he made his start, back in 91.
Yeah, he's a TV writer.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of TV.
A lot of TV.
Yeah, a lot of TV.
And I quickly listened to a BAFTA speech that he did for BAFTA just a couple minutes before we started this podcast. And he had some really cool things. He's very, very humble.
Interesting. Doesn't surprise me.
And he basically said, I'm here to give a lecture on writing, and I don't know anything.
I've heard some interviews
and it
with
wasn't
him,
in a sense of like just saying it.
Right.
Like, it was very genuine.
Right, for sure.
I don't know.
Right.
You know, and I loved that. And he also just, you know, the common thing that you hear a lot is like, just stay true to yourself. Like, don't think too much about what other people are going to perceive it to be, and just write. And this is what you get when you do that. Like, you just don't give a fuck what other people say. I'm writing being John Malcovich.
Right.
Well, what's that? And people don't understand it.
Right.
And then you come out with this phenomenal movie. So I think Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman kill it. Of course, Malkovich is great. John Cusack is fantastic. I told you before, I mean it. It's really, you know, it always changes. Your top 10 can change because it's just feeling and emotion, but it's definitely up there for me. And I come in really high on this movie, 9.5.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I think it's one that you'll never forget. I can walk out of a movie, and there are many, many movies that are forgettable.
Sure.
You won't forget this
You'll
movie.
never forget this movie.
You won't forget it. And I think it's an attribution to his writing. And
I would
directing.
actually like to hear people who didn't like the movie. I'd like to hear their reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of it's going to be because it's too absurdist, would be my guess. But I would love to hear thoughts on that.
I think it also falls into my personal sense of humor. I'm perfectly happy and home at absurd comedy.
Me too.
And so I think anybody that enjoys those things will love this movie. I would say everybody just take a trip down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, do it.
Go watch Being John Malkovich. I agree with you. If you don't like it, bring it and tell me in the comments. Let's have a discussion about it. I want to hear too. I'm curious what that is, because I came in really high. And I think the film, for me, deserves it. Real quick, $13 million budget, $32 million box office. This is the 20-year anniversary. Came out in 1999, or the fall of 99, and we're ending out 99. It's been out for 20 years. And so go give it a watch and travel down the portal of being John Malcovich. This is the Tame Aperture podcast. You can check us out online at tameaperture.com and on all streaming platforms. Alan, thanks for going through this one with me.
I love it. Thanks for letting me tag along on this one. This is amazing.
This is the Tame Aperture podcast, tameaperture.com, on all streaming platforms. Being John Malcovich, come back next week for another podcast. Take care, everybody.
The Tame Aperture podcast is produced by Dutch Angle Pictures in association with Studio B Productions. Listen, watch, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube.